So the VCT locking has started, and PaperX were unfortunately knocked out in their first series after a 2-0 loss against C9. C9 is a hell of an opponent to go up against first in a single elim tournament, but there were a lot of things that went wrong for PaperX, and I wanted to highlight them. Whilst we'll go through some of the rounds bit by bit, the problems I wanted to highlight fall under two main categories: PaperX's constant desire to make a play, but also sunk costs. And I'll explain as we go through them, but the pistol is kind of pretty self-explanatory with that.
Oh, what? He's walked up behind Zeppa!
Across the defensive half for PaperX, which is what we're focusing on in this video, PaperX did like to play a bit more aggressive towards A, take that space, take any fights against Cloud9 if they try and push there, mainly to fight over that orb. With Cloud9 playing the Phoenix, you can understand why that's an important area for PaperX to lock down. But it did mean that PaperX, because of that, were playing a bit more passive towards B. And this is a really interesting setup from Benkai for one. He's got the turret way in the back of holes, with 2 nanoswarms as well to stop anybody trying to get in on the other side. And this is the consistent thing that keeps coming up. The turret goes off, and immediately PaperX have that urge and feel the need to make a play. The turret's broken, the nanoswarm goes off, and the peek comes in from Benkai on the high ground, as well as Forsaken. The problem is that Cloud9 is sort of expecting this. Whilst Benkai does get a kill onto Zelsis, Zeppa trades out onto Forsaken, and then Benkai keeps going. But not only is Zeppa taking 0 damage from that engagement, Leaf and the rest of Cloud9 have made their way up B long. At this point, because the rest of PaperX is still rotating when this fight goes on, it gives Cloud9 a lot of space to get set up with their utility, Sage Wall, nanoswarms on the spike, etc. But also a lot of map control playing towards holes, playing towards long. Even when this flank comes in from PaperX initially from behind, it really doesn't amount to much because Leaf is allowed to set up his turret there and Cloud9 are able to get comfy. We have round 2, it's a PaperX eco. There's really not too much expectation of them to do too much damage here, but they still fall into, I guess, the bad habits that lost them this map, I think. The plant attempts to go in over on the B site, and Benkai jumps through the Phoenix Blaze to actually try and take down Leaf as that spike's been planted. Now granted, he does do a lot of damage, but Zeppa's watching for this, kills him fairly quickly, so there's the making a play again, but also Mindfreak that's still running in onto the site, jumps through with the shorty, does get the kill onto Leaf who was already low, but then Mindfreak goes down super quickly to Zeppa as well. And then you start to see all these PaperX players waterfall onto the site, but one by one. It kind of makes it a bit of a shooting range for Cloud9, and whilst a good amount of economic damage is actually done in the end for PaperX, the fact that this comes up frequently even on the 4x rounds was a bit concerning.
That is ridiculous!
This eking out a play problem rears its head again, literally the round after round 3. This is where Cloud9 are on a bonus, and they have a fairly standard default, just a Sky Flash that's going to come through, a quick Astra Smoke to allow anybody to sort of sneak onto site here, but the Sky Flash actually doesn't catch onto Benkai, and he goes to re-peek just as the flash is over to see if he can catch anybody by surprise, either to get some information or maybe just catch a kill. And Zelsis instantly locks onto that position and kills Benkai. All of that utility and all of that setup towards B is down, but not only that, PaperX are playing aggressively towards A again, which means that the rotation from these players over towards that A orb is going to be pretty long, or they're going to go for a flank. Mindfreak doesn't have any control of mid at this point, he can't really go in to help. Vanity gets information on where pretty much the rest of PaperX are pushing from, and Leaf is able to do a good amount of damage in the process. What made C9 scary in this map was how quickly they could make a decision. This wasn't just a, we're going to do this on the fly. You could definitely see that Cloud9 had built in some really nice protocols when it's, oh, we're being flanked, let's be a bit more aggressive and push towards Link. Let's use the Phoenix ult and take that space. And in the end, it was more unluckiness, I suppose, that PaperX lost it in a clutch like this.
Absolute decimation on PaperX!
Round 4, Cloud9 change it up and decide to go A. They have a lockdown, they expect that they're going up against an eco, so they're trying to make some space, do something a bit different, and keep PaperX guessing on some of these strategies. The one quick thing I wanted to highlight is, again, this is a play where a lockdown's placed in, but even here, Forsaken goes for a peek and tries to take a fight. And yet again, it's an eco, but you do see PaperX running in one by one from various different positions without much help, and it's frankly too easy for Cloud9 to deal with. These were the main rounds where I think you really see PaperX wanted to make something happen. It is their first official in a while, they're probably pretty jittery and just want to play, make something happen, but they really did fall into Cloud9's lap a little bit.
Benkai tries something crazy! They're taking damage, but every peek just hands Leaf a kill!
Round 6, and a similar start for PaperX. Here Leaf gets a nutty shot onto Mindfreak. I really don't think there's too much to do about that in that instance. But PaperX now with a player disadvantage have Devi peek out into mid, gets a kill, and quite rightfully backs off and gives this a lot of space. Also bear in mind that there is an alarm bot here for Benkai, which PaperX could definitely play off, but Jing, who moves over from the A site to Art, takes a fight again. He gets the first kill onto Ye after this alarm bot goes on, but then re-peeks into Zeppa. I want to pause it here and say that this is still a pretty good position for PaperX to be in. They've got that Sage Wall in A main, so they know that pretty much everybody from Cloud9 is going to be coming through Art. They still have Forsaken with the Operator, they still have control over backside as Devi's making his way over there. But here's PaperX wanting to make a play again. Benkai tries to catch a timing with the Judge. He knows that players like Zeppa are pretty low at this point with the damage that's been done, but it doesn't work. Leaf responds near enough instantly, which then forces Forsaken to take a peek, who then again goes into Leaf. And all of that control that I was talking about, all of that space that PaperX had kept a hold of and how much information they had with Cloud9 dissipates in this moment. The rest of Cloud9 push towards mid, Devi doesn't have any space, have any knowledge or control, and Cloud9 absolutely exploit him for it. And because of this, PaperX call a timeout straight after this round. This kind of downward spiral chain reaction happens again in round 9, and this is where Forsaken yet again has the Operator, but again he's riding that line so harshly with how aggressive he's playing with this Operator. Peeks once into a Trailblazer, holds his ground against the Sky Flash, and then is forced off that angle eventually by a Phoenix flashing. Gets a lot of utility out of Cloud9, which is useful, but it's so risky and all in positions where Mindfreak can't really help because he's sat behind the box on site. Now there's a good amount of stuff to work with here for PaperX on this defense. Whether they want to hold the line or try and retake space somewhere else, both options are good. But the rest of PaperX kinda stays a bit static right now, just waiting and seeing, whilst Forsaken again tries to push up all the way with this Operator, takes a fight on tree, tries to escape, and Zeppa peeks out of that smoke and kills him. Again in a spot where Mindfreak can't help, but because Mindfreak wants to really make sure that that play eventually pays off, he then goes for a peek and loses that fight against Zelsis. And then Devi goes for a peek on Art and then gets taken out by Leaf, despite getting one. This constant eagerness for PaperX to push up and take a fight, and then the constant need for everybody else to either trade the teammate that just died, or to take a gamble and hope that it pays off, was actually wild.
What is that from Zeppa?
Towards the end of this half, however, we do see PaperX starting to play together a little bit more and work together. In fact, one of the rounds that they won in round 5 was where they all basically deathballed onto a site on a retake and looked really good doing so. Cloud9 couldn't get a look in really without being bombarded by these players. But I wanted to highlight round 10 just to sort of finish on, that whilst this is another eco for PaperX, it's just that itchiness of wanting to take a fight and to just duel Cloud9 who are refusing to fight them. At this point, Cloud9 have shown themselves a little bit, some utility, the turret spotted them, etc. But then they just hold. They have the better weapons here, they're looking to sort of take fights, and just wait. And this is an example of PaperX absolutely taking the bait against Cloud9 and feeling antsy to take a fight. Benkai goes for a peek with a Marshall, and then all of these players just go to try and take these fights, to the point where Ye gets a collateral because Forsaken and Benkai peek out at the same time.
It's done! It is over!
To finish in the background, I just wanted to play round 12. This is a good round from PaperX again, where they're playing a bit more succinct and cohesive. They take mid control, they take out Leaf, it forces Cloud9 to play a bit faster and make a couple of mistakes that PaperX then exploit. I don't agree with the unnecessary harshness that people have towards PaperX. It's a single elim tournament, Cloud9's your first opponent, you've not really played a proper official since Champions, which also was a bit rough for you then. And I think that PaperX might even have a rough start to the first split of the Pacific region, but I do think that over time they will improve, they will see what they need to work on. But a lot of that stuff that made PaperX an exciting and strong team to begin with is now being used against them by teams that are expecting this kind of play. I also definitely don't agree with the harshness towards Alex the coach. I think a lot of the mistakes that were made were on the players themselves in the moment, as opposed to a failure of a macro big picture play. Thanks for watching, take care, I'll see you next time.